From the studios of Atlantic Television Network in Port Harcourt, this is ATN International News for today. First off, let's take a look at the headlines. Sudan ceasefire talks set to start. Court dismisses Thailand Prime Minister murder of Dr. Spark protests in India. Belgorod declares state of emergency. Police trace down sweets containing meth. These and many more stories to come your way in a moment. U.S.-mediated Sudan ceasefire talks were to kick off in Switzerland on Wednesday, even though the Sudanese government is set to stay away. Tom Perriello, the U.S. Special Envoy for Sudan, convening the discussion, insisted they go ahead regardless, saying the suffering people of Sudan, ravaged by the devastating conflict, cannot wait any longer. War has raged since April 2023 between the Sudanese army under the country's de facto rule Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces led by his former deputy Mohammed Hamda Daglo. But while the RSF delegation is in Switzerland for the talks, taking place behind closed doors in an undisclosed location, the Sudanese armed forces are yet to accept the invite. The talks, which could last up to 10 days, are being co-hosted by Saudi Arabia and Switzerland, with the African Union, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, and the United Nations present as observers. The brutal conflict has triggered one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. The fighting has forced 1 in 5 people to flee their homes, while tens of thousands have died. More than 25 million across the country, more than half its population, face acute hunger. Leader of a Kenyan cult who allegedly encouraged over 400 followers to starve themselves to death has pleaded not guilty to manslaughter in one of the worst ever cases of cult-related mass deaths. Self-proclaimed Pastor Paul Mackenzie appeared in court in the coastal city of Mombasa alongside 94 other suspects, while Mackenzie was arrested last April after 429 bodies, including children, were dug up from mass graves in Shakahola, a remote forest about 2 hours' drive west of the town of Malindi, and most of the bodies showed signs of starvation and assault. The prosecution say over 400 witnesses will testify over the next 4 days, and Yamina said the case was unique in Kenya and the suspects would be prosecuted under a law related to suicide pacts. And when the case broke last year, Kenyans were shocked and horrified that people could willingly starve themselves to death. It became known as the Shaka Shakahola Forest massacre survivors says children were supposed to be the first to starve themselves according to a macabre order drawn by Mackenzie, including the unmarried women, men, and last of all, church leaders. And he encouraged his followers to move to Shakahola Forest and prepare for the end of the world to meet Jesus, while Pastor Mackenzie is reported to have owned 800 acres of the remote forest where there is no mobile network. The forest was partitioned into different areas and given biblical places names such as Judea, Bethlehem, and Nazareth, while in March this year, the authorities released some victims' bodies to relatives after months of identifying them through DNA test, and so far 34 bodies have been returned. Tanzanian police have arrested prominent politician Tundu Lissu and 4 other opposition officials. It said 3 politicians, including Lissu, were detained in the southwestern town of Mbeya on the eve of the planned rally to mark the World Youth Day. Chadema's chairman and the head of its youth wing were arrested, and the reported arrest comes a year after President Samia Hassan lifted a ban on opposition gatherings and promised to restore competitive politics, while the police banned the Chadema rally, saying it was intended to cause violence. They cited the party's rallying call for people to come together like the youth in Kenya, apparently referring to the weeks of deadly anti-government demonstrations in the neighboring East African country. The police have not officially spoken about the arrest, while Chadema spokesman John Rema said groups of youths traveling in hired buses were arrested and forced back to their respective regions under armed escort, and about 10,000 young people were set to meet in Mbeya to celebrate Youth Day with the slogan, "Take charge of your future," according to the party's youth wing, but police said no such meetings would be allowed in the city or elsewhere in the country. Armed wing of the Palestinian group Hamas said its militants had shot and killed an Israeli hostage and wounded 2 others, both women, in 2 separate incidents in Gaza, after Palestinian militants seized 251 hostages during their October 7 attack on Israel that triggered the ongoing war, with 111 of them still held in Gaza. Abu Ubaid, spokesman of the Ezzedine Al-Qassam Brigade, in a statement that in 2 separate incidents, 2 recruits assigned to guard enemy prisoners fired at a Zionist prisoner, killing him immediately, and also injured 2 female prisoners critically, while Hamas had formed a committee to investigate the shootings. Israeli military spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari and was deeply concerned about the physical and mental condition, given the prolonged time that has passed and the harsh conditions of their captivity, while the October 7 attack resulted in the deaths of 1,198 people, mostly civilians, according to a report based on official Israeli figures. Israel's retaliatory military offensive in the Gaza Strip since then has killed at least 39,897 people, according to the Hamas-run territory's health ministry, which does not provide details on civilian and militant deaths. Iran has rejected Western calls to stand down its threat to retaliate against Israel for the killing of Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran late last month. The Islamic Republic and its allies have blamed Israel for Haniyeh's killing on July 31st during a visit to the Iranian capital for the swearing-in of President Masoud Pezeshkian. Israel has not commented, while Iran has vowed to avenge the death, which came hours after an Israeli strike in Beirut killed a senior commander of Hezbollah, the powerful Iran-backed militant group in Lebanon. Western diplomats have scrambled to avert a major conflagration in the Middle East, where tensions were already high due to the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. This is coming after, in a statement on Monday, the United States and its European allies urged Iran to de-escalate and called on Iran to stand down its ongoing threats of a military attack against Israel and discussed the serious consequences for regional security should such an attack take place by the joint statement from Britain, France, Germany, Italy, and the United States. The White House warned that a significant set of attacks by Iran and its allies was possible as soon as this week, saying Israel shared the same assessment, while the United States and its European allies also called for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, with difficult talks set for Thursday on halting the conflict. Court in Bangladesh has initiated a murder investigation against the ousted ex-Premier Sheikh Hasina and 6 senior figures from her administration on Tuesday, following the police killing of a man during civil unrest last month. Hasina, 76, fled by helicopter to a neighboring India a week ago, where she remains as protesters flooded the streets of Dhaka, bringing her iron-fisted rule to a dramatic end, while over 450 people were killed during the weeks of arrest leading up to her removal from power. He said the Dhaka Metropolitan Court had ordered the police to accept the murder case against the accused persons, the first step in a criminal investigation under Bangladeshi law, while Mia's filing with the court also named Hasina's former Home Minister Asaduzzaman Khan and Obaidul Gada, the General Secretary of Hasina's Awami League Party, and also names 4 senior police officers appointed by Hasina's government who have since vacated their posts. The case accuses the 7 of responsibility for the death of a grocery store owner who was shot dead on 19th July by police violently suppressing protests, while Hasina's government faced accusations of widespread human rights abuses, including the extrajudicial killing of thousands of her political opponents. Nobel laureate Mohammed Yunus returned from Europe 3 days after Hasina's ouster to lead a temporary administration tasked with the monumental challenge of steering democratic reforms, while the 84-year-old won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006 for his pioneering work in microfinance and is credited with helping millions of Bangladeshis escape grinding poverty. Cold cases investigators have arrested a 55-year-old woman in North Carolina in connection with the death of a newborn girl found in a California dumpster 37 years ago. According to the Riverside Police Department, through DNA testing, detectives identified the baby's mother as Melissa Jean Allen Avila. Police said in a Thursday news release, Avila is charged with murder, according to a criminal complaint. Newsman has made efforts to reach Avila and has reached out to her public defender. Avila made an initial appearance in court on Wednesday and was released on her own recognizance through an agreement between the prosecution and the defense, according to John Hall. According to John Hall, a spokesperson for the Riverside County District Attorney's Office, the newborn had been found deceased in a dumpster in Riverside on October 13, 1987 by a man rummaging for recyclables, police said in the release. Homicide investigators were unable to identify a suspect, and the case went unsolved for nearly 40 years. In 2020, the department's new homicide cold case units reopened the case. Police said they worked with Authorum, a DNA testing company with funding from Citizens of Justice, a nonprofit that provides financial assistance for investigative agencies and families to help solve cold cases with advanced DNA analysis solution and forensic genealogy. In November 2021, Authorum was able to get DNA from evidence in the case and build a profile for the baby. According to its website, the police agency's forensics genetic genealogy team then developed new leads that led to potential relatives. Avila was taken into custody in Shelby, North Carolina, which is about 45 miles west of Charlotte. Avila was 19 at the time of the baby's death. There was no evidence the baby's father had any link to the case, police said. U.S. Army analyst has pleaded guilty to charges of conspiring to sell military secrets to China, the Department of Justice has said. Sergeant Coben Shores was arrested in March after an investigation by the FBI and U.S. Army counterintelligence alleged that he was paid $42,000 in exchange for dozens of sensitive security records. The criminal conspiracy began in June 2022 and continued up until his arrest. Officials said he is scheduled for sentencing in January. Sergeant Shores, who held a security clearance to accept top-secret information, conspired to collect data with someone whom he believed to be living in Hong Kong, according to court documents. The purported Hong Kong resident asked Sergeant Shores to collect sensitive data related to missile defense and mobile artillery systems, according to court records. Sergeant Shores also collected data on U.S. fighter aircraft, military tactics, and the U.S. military's defense strategy for Taiwan, based on what it learned from Russia's war in Ukraine. Sergeant Shores on Tuesday pleaded guilty to all charges against him, including conspiracy to obtain and disclose national defense information and bribery of a public official. The indictment against Sergeant Shores earlier detailed messages he sent to the supposed Hong Kong resident, who was referred to in court documents as conspirator A. In one exchange, Sergeant Shores said he wished he could be Jason Bourne, in reference to the fictional spy character. After being promised more money from his handler, he said in another message, "I hope so. I need to get my other BMW back." The FBI and U.S. Army Counterintelligence Command are continuing investigations into the case. Police officer accused of shooting a pregnant woman in Ohio has been charged with her murder. Takia Young, 21 years old, was around 25 weeks pregnant at the time of her death last August. Her unborn daughter also died in the police shooting on Tuesday. A grand jury in the city of Columbus found sufficient evidence to file charges against Blendown Township Police Officer Connor Grubb for murder, involuntary manslaughter, and assault. Body cam video of the fatal encounter released last year showed police attempting to stop Miss Young from driving away so they could question her about alleged shoplifting. In the video, she appeared to drive toward the officer who fired the fatal shot as he commanded her to exit the car. Ms. Young was suspected of shoplifting alcohol from a Kroger grocery store, investigators says. Lawyers for Mr. Grubb say he fired in self-defense. Meanwhile, the local chapter of the Fraternal Order of Police Labor Union on Tuesday slammed the indictment as politically motivated. Workers at the world's largest copper mine in Chile are striking after pay talks with Australian resources giant BHP fell apart, casting a shadow of uncertainty Wednesday over the market for the commodity. The Escondida mine in northern Chile yearly digs up around 5% of the world's copper, a coveted metal used in everything from electrical wiring to rechargeable batteries. A global glut in copper stockpiles should blunt the immediate impact of the strike, analysts said, although there are fears it could start to bite if production is slowed for more than a week or two. Australian-based BHP, which owns a majority stake in the vast open-air mine, said scaled-back operations would continue as non-union staff put contingency plans into action. Production ground to a halt at the Escondida mine when workers downed tools for 44 days in 2017, costing BHP $740 million and whipping 1.3% of Chile's annual economic output. Encouraged by surging global prices earlier this year, union representatives have sought a bigger slice of profits for the 2,400 workers they reportedly represent as Escondida. The union said it's launched a legal strike over unmet demands that included bigger bonuses, shorter work days, and compensation tied to total years worked at the mine. Media reports in Charles said BHP had offered a one-off bonus of nearly $29,000, lower than the $36,000 demanded. The buoyant copper prices seen in May this year have surged in recent months, with significant stockpiles of refined metal building in the deposits of China and elsewhere. You're watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We'll be back after this break. Do stay tuned. Welcome back to the broadcast of the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We are open for adverts, placements, bookings, and commercials. And you can connect with us and watch us on ATN Socials, Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network, Instagram and TikTok, Atlantic TV Network 1, X, formerly Twitter, Atlantic TV Net. Watch us live on our website, atlanticnetwork.tv. Now, let's continue with the story. Thai court has dismissed Prime Minister Srettha Thavisin for appointing to his cabinet a former lawyer who was once jailed. The Constitutional Court ruled that Mr. Srettha had violated the rules on ethics with a display of defiant behavior. The 67-year-old Srettha, who has been in power for less than a year, is the third Prime Minister in 16 years to be removed by the same court. He will be replaced by an interim leader until Thailand's parliament convenes to elect a new prime minister. Mr. Srettha's dismissal means he has now gone the way of so many other parties and administrations in Thailand. Felled by the disproportionate power of the country's constitutional court, politics in Thailand is not known for its ethics. Bribery is commonplace, and ministers with more serious convictions have been allowed to serve in the past. ATN learned that in May, the court had accepted a petition filed by some 40 senators asking to remove the Prime Minister from his position over his appointment of Pichit Chuenban, who was previously sentenced to 6 months in jail for attempted bribery. On Wednesday, 5 of the 9 judges ruled that Mr. Srettha had indeed violated the ethics of his office by appointing a lawyer who had a criminal conviction to his cabinet, despite him quitting after just 19 days. The votes for a new prime minister will involve plenty of backroom bargaining, while Thailand struggles to revive its faltering economy. Mr. Srettha became prime minister only last August, ending 9 years of military rule in Thailand. His appointment, too, was the result of a political bargain that throws out the young reformist Move Forward party, which had won the most seats and votes in last year's general election. It was a stunning victory that raised hopes for a fresh start for Thailand, but Move Forward was blocked from forming the government by the military-appointed Senate. The election's second biggest winner, Pheu Thai, then struck a deal with other armed-backed parties to form a ruling coalition without Move Forward, and Mr. Sretha found himself at the helm. Last week, the Constitutional Courts dissolved the Move Forward party for making unconstitutional campaign promises and banned party leaders. 11 prime ministers from politics for 10 years. Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida will not seek re-election as leader of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, which he says needs a new start. The 67-year-old LDP veteran is expected to step down as Prime Minister after the party elects a new leader in September. Support for Mr. Kishida, who has been Prime Minister since 2021, has fallen in the wake of a corruption scandal involving his party, rising living costs and a slumping yen. His approval ratings had plummeted to 15.5% last month, the lowest of a prime minister in more than a decade. Within the party, some have doubted whether Mr. Kishida can lead the LDP to a win in the next generation election due in 2025. The party has been in power almost continuously since 1955. Still, LDP leaders were shocked by Mr. Kishida's announcement. A senior leader told broadcaster NHK that they had tried to persuade Mr. Kishida to run for office, but the Prime Minister said that that would have been irresponsible. A member of action in the very regrettable and unfortunate, adding that Prime Minister had a good record in foreign policy, defense and domestic politics, but he was forced to step down due to the issue of politics and money. Analysts have said that Japan is going through a once-in-a-generation political crisis as the ruling party fights to clean up its image. Last December, 4 LDP cabinet ministers resigned within a fortnight over a fundraising scandal involving the ruling party's most powerful faction. 5 senior vice ministers and a parliamentary vice ministers from the same faction, formerly led by late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, also. Japan's prosecutors launched a criminal investigation into whether dozens of LDP lawmakers received proceeds from fundraising events that saw millions of dollars cut off. But Mr. Kishida's handling of the fundraising scandal drew public criticism, which made him more unpopular. The controversy also unfolded as Japanese households struggle with food prices soaring at the fastest rate in almost half a century. The combination of economic woes and political scandal fueled mistrust in the ruling party despite a weak and divided opposition. Early on Friday morning, a 31-year-old female trainee doctor retired to sleep in a seminar hall after a grueling day at one of India's oldest hospitals. It was the last time she was seen alive. The next morning, her colleagues discovered her half-naked body on the podium, bearing extensive injuries. Police later arrested a hospital volunteer worker in connection with what they say is a case of rape and murder at Kolkata's 138-year-old RG Medical College. Tens of thousands of women in Kolkata and across West Bengal are expected to participate in a Reclaim the Night march at midnight on Wednesday, demanding the independence to live in freedom and without fear. The march takes place just before India's Independence Day on Thursday. Outraged doctors have struck work both in the city and across India, demanding a strict federal law to protect healthcare workers. The tragic incident has again cast a spotlight on the violence against healthcare workers in the country. Women make up nearly 30% of India's doctors and 80% of the nursing staff. They are also more vulnerable than their male colleagues. Official data reveals a troubling 4% increase in crimes against women in 2022, with over 20% of these incidents involving rape and assaults. The crime in the Kolkata hospitals last week exposed the alarming security risks faced by them in many of India's state-run health facilities. At RG Hospital, which sees over 3,500 patients daily, the overworked trainee doctors, some working up to 36 hours straight, had no designated restrooms, forcing them to seek rest in a third-floor seminar room. Reports indicate that the arrested suspect, a patient volunteer with a troubled past, had unrestricted access to the ward and was captured on footage. Police allege that no background checks were conducted on the volunteer. More far-right rioters are facing potential prison sentences today, as over 1,000 suspects have now been arrested. The National Police Chief's Council said its latest update that 1,024 had been arrested and 575 charged following days of fascist violence across England and Northern Ireland. Those arrested include a 69-year-old accused of vandalism in Liverpool and an 11-year-old boy in Belfast. Amongst those due in court today is 7 men who will be sentenced at Sheffield Crown Court following the attack on a hotel housing asylum seekers in Rotherham. A far-right mob targeted the Holiday Inn Hotel on Sunday, August 4, as they attacked police and attempted to set fire to the building. Yesterday, a man who looted cosmetics chain Lush during riots in Hull pleaded guilty to violent disorder, burglary, and racially aggravated criminal damage. John Honey, 25, admitted 3 charges of burglary at Lush, the O2 store and shoe zone in the city on August 3rd. He also pleaded guilty to the racially aggravated criminal damage of a BMW and damaging 9 other cars. British annual inflation rose back above the Bank of England's target in July. Official data showed on Wednesday the consumer prices index rose 2.2% last month, compared with a 2.0% gain in June. The Office for National Statistics said in a statement it means overall prices are rising faster than the Bank of England's 2% target, although an increase was widely predicted. The rise is largely due to prices of gas and electricity falling by less than they did last year. The bank expects inflation to rise further this year before falling back again. Ukraine says it will not hold on to Russian territory captured in its surprise cross-border incursion and offered to stop raids in Moscow agreed just peace. Ukrainian forces entered Russia's Kursk region last Tuesday, taking over 24 settlements in the biggest attack by a foreign army on Russian soil since World War II. Russia said on Tuesday it had fended off no attacks in Kursk, while more than 120,000 people have fled the area, and Ukraine's military chief Oleksandr Syrskyi said his troops 1,000 square kilometers of Russian territory. At least 800 square kilometers was under Ukrainian control as of Monday, according to analysis of data from the US-based Institute for the Study of Foreign Ministry spokesman George Tiki on Tuesday said he was not interested in taking over Russian territory and defended Ukraine's action as absolutely legitimate. Ukraine said it was imposing movement restrictions in a 20-kilometer zone in Sumy region along the border with Kursk region due to an increase in the intensity of hostilities and sabotage. activities, while Russia's defense ministry said it had foiled new Ukrainian attacks in Kursk by enemy mobile groups in armored vehicles to break through deep into Russian territory. Alexander Botnikov, head of Russia's FSB security service, also said in a statement that Ukraine had carried out their attack with the support of the collective West, and since launching its invasion in February 2022, Russia has captured territory in southern and eastern Ukraine and subjected Ukrainian cities to missile and drone barrages. And Ukraine's offensive was the biggest cross-border action since the invasion and caught Russia off guard. State of emergency has been declared in the Russian border region of Belgorod following attacks by Ukrainian forces. Belgorod Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov said the situation was extremely difficult due to daily shelling in the region. It follows Ukraine's surprise cross-border attack in Russia's Kursk region last week, leading to mass evacuations and a state of emergency being declared there by Russian President Vladimir Putin. In a video and telegram, Governor Gladkov said he would be appealing to the government to declare an emergency at the federal level. He said the city of Shubakino and the village of Ustinka had been attacked by Ukrainian drones. No casualties have been reported as of yet. Russia says it shot down 117 drones overnight, mainly targeted 4 regions: Kursk, Voronezh, Belgorod, and Nizhny Novgorod. Belgorod lies just south of the Kursk region, the location of Ukraine's deepest incursion into Russia since Moscow launched its full-scale invasion in 2022. Moscow insisted on Tuesday that Ukrainian attempts to push deeper had been thwarted. But this has been approved long before President Putin claimed on Monday that Ukraine had refused Russian proposals to return to a peaceful settlement plan. He said it appears that the enemy, with the help of his Western masters, is fulfilling their will, and the West is fighting us with the hands of Ukrainians. Russia has so far struggled to halt the Ukrainian advance, with almost 200,000 Russians have fled their homes in parts of the Kursk region. On Tuesday, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said troops had advanced further into Russian territory, while Army Chief Alexander Syrskyi claimed Kyiv had control over 40 square kilometers with 74 settlements taken. But exactly how much Russian territory has been seized is uncertain, and there is skepticism on Syrskyi's previous claims that a total of 1,000 square kilometers is under Ukrainian control. Ukraine said it would not keep Russian territory it had captured, adding that it would cease raids if Moscow agreed a just peace. The country's foreign ministry spokesman Hori Taki said Kyiv was not interested in taking over Russian territory. There are no longer any active wildfires in the wider Athens area, but officials remain on high alert, Greece's chief fire brigade spokesman has said. Vasilis Vathrakogiannis told newsmen that firefighters will continue to douse the ground and maintain a strong presence in the area. Milder winds and extensive efforts by the emergency services have helped bring the blazes under control, but there is still risks of flare-ups because of wind, gusts, and temperatures soaring well above 30 degrees Celsius, 86 Fahrenheit in the daytime. ATN gathered that 1 woman died and dozens more people, including firefighters, were injured after the fires tore through 100,000 acres of land. Thousands of local residents have been evacuated. The huge smoke cloud that hung over Athens for hours was gone on Tuesday, but the sky was still hazy. The Greek authorities are now assessing the damage and preparing compensation schemes for affected residents as well as businesses. The Interior Ministry has allocated €4.7 million in emergency funding to areas affected by wildfires, though less than 10% of the bond's land is forested. According to reports in Greek media, more than 700 firefighters, 199 fire engines and 35 waterbombing aircrafts have been involved altogether in efforts to extinguish the fires, which first broke out on Monday afternoon about 35 kilometers north of the Greek capital. By Monday, were confirmed in 40 different locations, with some areas seeing flames as high as 25 meters, though the fires have largely are continuing to douse the ground and maintain a strong presence in the capital region. Suburbs including near Penteli, Vrilicia and Patima Halandriu are among the worst affected areas. Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis cut short his holidays to return to handle the crisis after activating the EU's mutual civil protection mechanism. European countries including Italy, France, Serbia, Spain, the Czech Republic and Romania provide assistance including aircraft, personnel and aid to Greece. Teenager has been detained after he videoed himself stabbing 5 people who were sitting in an open-air cafe in the northwestern Turkish city of Eskişehir. The 18-year-old, identified as Adar K, streamed the attack, which occurred on Monday, on social media via a camera mounted on his chest. Reports that patrons of the tea garden in a park in the northwest of the city, which sits around 140 miles west of the capital, Ankara, had been relaxing after praying at a nearby mosque. All 5 of the victims were hospitalized and 2 in a life-threatening condition, according to state media. An image of the items the teenager was arrested with, published by the Turkish government, shows he was carrying 2 knives and a small axe. He was also wearing a vest which bears a black sun symbol associated with neo-Nazis, as well as a helmet, a balaclava with a skull printed on it, and camo trousers. The victims have been identified only by the initials NO, TA, CO, CA and MK. According to a Turkish airline newspaper, T24, they were aged 87, 71, 57, 64 and 64 respectively. It's reported that as of Tuesday, a court had restricted the publication of details about the incident that could prejudice legal proceedings. The Eskişehir's governor's office said in a statement that the city's public prosecutor was now investigating the incident meticulously. It added that the suspect had turned 18 on 19 July this year and appeared to have no prior criminal record. Police believe he may have been influenced by computer games, several Turkish news sites also report. Footage posted on X, formerly Twitter, by Ali Yerlikaya, Turkey's interior minister, shows the suspect lying face down on the street while handcuffed after he had been detained by police. It also shows him later being escorted from a hospital and placed in the back of a police vehicle. Mr. Yerlikaya wrote that he wished a speedy recovery to our citizens injured in the attack. Moving on to Spanish police have arrested a man in Madrid for trying to sell a fake Leonardo da Vinci painting in Italy for 1.3 million euros. French customs officers intercepted the suspect 2 years ago at the Modane border, where he was found traveling with a forged portrait in his vehicle. The man in his 40s was suspected of being on his way to a buyer base in Milan, Italy. While at first everything looked in order, the customs officials found the man's export permit, though valid, had expired. They seized the portrait, ostensibly of Italian aristocrat Gian Giacomo Trivulzio, and alerted the Spanish police. The permit said the portrait being transported was a Leonardo da Vinci, worked value at 1.3 million euro, and was being taken for sale in Milan. The permit, having expired, meant that transporting the art was illegal. The fake painting was supposed to have been made by Da Vinci when he was in the employ of Duke Ludovico Sova in Milan between 1482 and 1499. A police spokesperson confirmed that a Spanish man in his 40s was arrested in connection with the case. He added that an export license isn't a guarantee of a work's authenticity, noting that in this case, the license was being used as a means of claiming the painting was original. Police in New Zealand are racing to trace down sweets containing potentially lethal levels of methamphetamine after they were distributed by a charity in Auckland. Up to 400 people may have received the sweets from Auckland City Mission as part of a food parcel, said the anti-poverty charity. The sweets were donated anonymously by a member of the public in a sealed retail package. It's added, at least 3 people, including a child, sought medical attention afterwards, though none are currently in hospital. Each individual sweet could have a street value of around $1,000, according to the New Zealand Drug Foundation. Police say while the incidents could be accidental rather than a targeted operation, they had not withdrawn any conclusions as it is. A bit early to say. The charity alerted the authorities on Tuesday after being alerted by a recipient about the funny tasting sweets. Aileen Robinson, chief executive of Auckland City Mission, said that some of the charity's staff members tried the sweets themselves and agreed with the complaints and started to feel funny afterwards. According to Ms. Robinson, the mission distributes around 50,000 food parcels a year, and only commercially manufactured food are included in these parcels. They then sent sweets that were still on site to the NZ Drug Foundation for tests, which confirmed that potentially lethal levels of methamphetamine were contained in the samples. In a statement, the foundation said they found about 3 grams of methamphetamine in a sweet that was sent for testing. Methamphetamine can cause chest pain, racing heart, seizures, hypothermia, delirium, and loss of consciousness, according to the foundation. And that's the international news for today. Before we go, let's take a look at the major stories. Sudan ceasefire talks set to start. Courts also dismisses Thailand. Prime Minister mother of doctor sparks protest in India. Belgorod declares state of emergency. Police trace down sweets containing meth. And that's it for today. I am Victor Peter. Thank you so much for staying tuned and watching the international news. You can follow us on our social media platforms: X, formerly Twitter, at Atlantic TV Net, Facebook and YouTube at Atlantic Television Network, Instagram at Atlantic TV Network. Watch us live on our website, atlanticnetwork.tv. Peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Thank you.